Number 5. Mirror, mirror. Starting off this list, we arrive at somewhat of a tame curse. I mean, not tame, because I've hit nothing but red lights for the past month since I broke mine. We've all broken a mirror or two, haven't we? Little hand mirror here or there. Apparently breaking some melted liquid sand can get you in some pretty hot water. Almost everybody has heard of breaking mirrors. Pretty well dooms you to at least 7 years and of bad luck. We've all done it. It happens. Well, apparently it's an old curse. This one's origins begin in ancient Rome. The Romans believed that the human soul would renew every 7 years, repairing whatever damage they had suffered during that time. They also thought that a mirror's reflection was a way to look inside said soul. So what they thought was, if you break a mirror, you break a little bit of your soul as well, which would then again have to go through this 7-year cycle to renew and cleanse that bad aura right out of you. Yeah, do this for 7 years as your soul is reborn. You endure misfortune because of your imperfect, now shattered soul. Sounds like a bad breakup. Mirrors were not cheap either back then, and they were pretty low quality and easily breakable. In order to avoid negligence to the owners, it was also known that breaking a mirror and the whole 7 years of bad luck thing was also a simple scare tactic. I'm not making any more mirrors. You know how much work that is? Like, if you break it, you buy it, pal, and 7 years of bad luck too. I don't know, it's hard. These take a long time to make. Next time, just watch your hands, please. Number 4, St. Anne's Well. As always, if you like what we do here at Top 5 Scary, hit us up with a like. A little spot my family likes to call home. Liverpool, England, and also one of the newest reasons that I'm never revisiting again. In 2016, archaeologists uncovered an ancient well near Liverpool that dates to the medieval era. Archaeologists say that they rediscovered a large sandstone well on a private farm in Liverpool. When archaeologists arrived at the site, there was barely anything of a well, as it had become completely filled with earth for hundreds of years. The cult of St. Anne was once a widespread medieval following. The mother of the Virgin Mary, Anne, is often associated with great and powerful healing wells. Anne supposedly bathed in the well, which was known for treating skin and eye diseases. Like OG LASIK, you know, just hop right on in, cataracts gone in a flash. Apparently for centuries, a priory of 12 monks tended to the well mid-16th century, and there was a huge competition and demand for this hot spring. The priory's father and his neighbor both claimed ownership. He's being snide, isn't he? He's being a snide one. Classic case of Darcy versus Delwayne. 2 days later, King Henry VIII shows up, and after all the talk with his men, they seized the well and both dudes lost out. Scouse luck, mates, go on, Scouse luck. Apparently lore goes, Delwayne cursed Darcy, and according to legend, Delwayne then dropped dead on the spot. Talk about karma, dude. Within 3 months, Darcy's son had passed away from unknown illnesses as well as Darcy losing his job. And a year later, Darcy was found at the bottom of said well. Despite the grim legend, the well continued to be used even after the lore had become widespread. It actually made it more popular. It was purposely buried, but then recently discovered, restored, and reinforced. I only do the wishing wells. You know, those are the only wells that I do. They're the nice kind. Number 3, the Knights Templar. Everybody knows about the superstition about the number 13. Supposedly unlucky. Dude, I lived on the 14th floor for like 3 years. Lights always flickered, always. Just saying. We're also familiar with the Friday the 13th being unlucky and not just a banger of a Halloween movie. But not a lot of people know where this 13 thing actually originates from. In the early 14th century, King Philip of France was at war with the English. There was this really rich group called the Knights Templar, and after funding King Philip's side of the war, he didn't really have any intention on paying them back. Yeah, you see, the Knights Templar had become a powerful organization in Europe. The most powerful. During the Crusades, King Philip needed supplies and revisions. Never intending to pay them back, of course, Philip doubled down, conspiring with Pope Clement V, who, on Friday, October 13th, 1307, led an ambush, seize, mass arrest of the Knights leader Jacques de Molay and all of his men. They were all charged and imprisoned. He was tortured, imprisoned, and burned at the stake. However, before dying, Jacques de Molay cursed both enemies, claiming that both Clement and Philip would be dead within the year and that their names would be forgotten. Clement succumbed to a fatal disease. Philip died of a stroke, like right after each other. By 1328, all of Philip's sons and grandsons had perished from rapid illness, and the curse had sprung true. Yeah, I wouldn't cross the Navy SEALs of the medieval times. Probably not a good idea. Now I got flickering lights because you two backstabbed a cult army for doing something nice for you? Shame on you. Number 2, the PELLA tablet. In 1986, archaeologists unearthed a cursed tablet during excavations of the ancient Macedonian capital of Pella. Archaeologists uncovered 1,600 Greek cursed tablets since then. However, the PELLA tablet is still by far the oldest, and apparently the most cursed. Created somewhere between 400 and 350 BC, the PELLA tablet is a letter to the gods asking them for help to curse a woman who stole her man's heart. And not like a sappy mixtape or anything, this curse is inscribed on lead scroll. It's metal paper. The writer, one who calls herself Dagina, calls upon divine powers from the gods to solve her problem. Her beloved, Dionysophon, is on the verge of marriage to another woman. Dagina wants him to herself, of course, and then asks the gods for some help. The language on the stone is so old that it actually predates the modern and ancient Macedonian language. These cursed tablets, or spell scrolls, were called katatismoi or deficciones, and it was widely believed that they would continue to work and curse as long as the text and tablet existed. Basically, as long as there's batteries in there, it's gonna keep on cursing. James L. O'Neill from the University of Sydney interprets the translation of the ancient text as, quote, "Forbid by writing the ceremony and the marriage of Dionysophon and Thetima, and all other women, and widows and virgins, but especially Thetima. And I assign them to Macron and the Daemones. And whenever I shall unroll and read this again after digging it up, then Dionysophon may marry. But not before. May he not take any wife but me, and may I and no other woman grow old with Dionysophon. I am your suppliant. Pity me, dear Daemonis, for I am weak and bereft of all friends. But protect me so this does not happen and evil Thetima will perish evilly. But may I be fortunate and blessed." Whoa, for never was a story more woe than this of Thetima and her Dionysophon. I think it sounds better than Romeo and Juliet. What do you think? I mean, that's not very nice to wish there, Dagina. Kinda mean if you ask me, and very jealous. Also, Thetima, girl, you gotta split. This girl's out here looking for you. You're gonna catch some hands for talking to someone else's man. I'm just saying, you've been warned. Number 1, the Bjorktorp Runestone. Of course, the number 1 spot, Bjorktorp Runestone. I had to. I just did my ancestry and apparently I'm 12% Viking. Yeah, I just send my spit somewhere and they told me that. This specific cursed runestone is one of the many megalithic standing stones located in Sweden. This one actually is one of the world's tallest as well, measuring 4.5 meters high. It's part of a stone circle with 2 other blank standing stones. Scholars date the runestone's inscription to the 7th century AD. It's carved with a type of rune that form an intermediate version between the elder Futhark and the younger Futhark. The runestone is inscribed on both sides. The short message reads, "I foresee perdition," and the longer side translates to, "I, master of the runes, conceal here runes of power, incessantly plagued by maleficence doomed to insidious death. Is he who breaks this monument. I prophesy destruction." A little aggressive, bro, but I guess, they were Vikings, so aggression was kind of their thing. Local lore says that the curse came true at one point. Long ago, a man wanted to move the runestone so that he could have more room to farm, so he piled wood around it in an attempt to heat the stone and then crack it with water. As soon as he lit the fire, the man's hair lit aflame. His clothes were soon engulfed and the man perished right there next to the ruin. Yo, I would just avoid these at all costs. Like, no point should you ever be trying to move an ancient Viking cursed megalith. Again, unless you're Kratos helping Loki climb a mountain. Number 5, King Casimir IV. In the 1970s, 12 archaeologists opened a tomb in Krakow, Poland of unknown date. Somewhere around 500 years ago, they think. 1427, King Casimir Jagiellon IV. He grows up to become the Grand Duke of Lithuania in 1440, and then, eventually, King of Poland in 1447. Fast forward back to the 1970s. The Chapel of Wawel Castle. They find a wooden coffin basically rotten, and what remained were only sections of the king's decaying corpse. Spooky. But then 4 out of the 12 researchers who were working on exhuming the tomb passed away the following couple of days. Suddenly this seemed to be a repeat of a similar event that happened about 50 years ago. Yeah, at least a dozen researchers, either working on site or handling artifacts in a lab, began to experience severe health problems, even lethal. Yeah, Talk about cursed tombs. Holy moly. An agreement to examine the historical site was debauched for a while. Excitement for any kind of scientific research due to the strict government in the 1970s, you see. Cardinal Karol Wojtyla, this guy was a huge supporter of scientific research and already studying King Casimir's dad. He was responsible for the decision to open and study the tomb a few years later. And after that, a few years later, he becomes Pope John Paul II. Like, how awesome is that? Guy was woke back then. He was like, nah, science rules, we need to dig in. The story caught the attention of a nation. Before the burial site was exhumed, the archaeologists and citizens all joked that the tomb was cursed and those who continued should proceed with caution. And then 4 of them, well, yeah. I mean, numerous types of mold spores that cause potential health risks to humans if inhaled. This is like the Howard Carter case all over again. Most tombs in ancient sites contain a pathogenic fungus called Aspergillus flavus. Causes allergies, asthma, and likely fatality. Yeah, big stuff. Heavy stuff. Number 4, the Assyrian tablet. As always, dudes, if you like what we do here at Top 5 Scary, hit that thumbs up button, alright? 6'1" height. That's how tall I am, and that's how tall our next curse is. But engraved onto a slab of basalt. 6'1", absolutely massive, and talk about heavy, too. Quote, whoever discards this image from the presence of Salmanu puts it in another place, whether he throws it into water or covers it with earth, or brings and places it in a taboo house where it is inaccessible. May the god Salmanu, the great lord, overthrow his sovereignty. May his name and his seed disappear in the land. Okay, yep, no, that's definitely a curse. Sounds like Rush lyrics, doesn't it? I feel like Geddy Lee wrote this. Written by an unknown author, inscribed onto an Assyrian tablet 800 BC. Ah, definitely not Rush then. And again, this thing is massive, but now, unfortunately, broken in 2. One half ended up in the hands of the British Museum and the other Bonham's auction house. Look, I understand private collectors are a thing, but like, can we just have like a non-biased, geographically neutral ancient library that we can all just collectively study? So many that's mine, no, that's mine. Sounds like kids fighting over this stuff, doesn't it? We're all just curious, we want to know. The fragment in the British Museum's collection was found in 1879 in Syria. It was formed in basalt to commemorate a military achievement of King Adad Nirari III. The British Museum has the top of the statue with the image of the knight's head portion. Again, this thing has gone through so many legalities about ownership, like, where did we find it? Who wrote it? The carvings show the rulers alongside sacred symbols, the winged sun disk of Shamash, the star of Ishtar, and the thunderbolt of the weather god Adad. The lower portion was put up for auction by a private collector in London in 2014, and in 2017, the bottom half made international headlines. Once again. This time it was at the center of a dispute between its former owner and the commissioner of the Metropolitan Police in London. The commissioner apparently was sued by a Lebanese antiques dealer after police confiscated the relic. Yeah, too much arguing for me. Like, just share it. Couple months here, couple months there. I don't know. Just get along so we can study the damn thing. Number 3, Polish King's Curse. In April 1931, in a crypt in Vilnius, ancient Polish queens and kings were found, but they were found with their crowns still on their heads. Yeah, cryptic stuff. It was a royal burial, you see. Described by those involved as the discovery of a century. Polish researchers didn't even know what they were in for. After a massive storm had flooded a crumbling cathedral in Vilnius, they threw down sandbags to preserve the artifacts, but on the night of April 25th, the water had won the battle and the chambers were completely flooded. They followed the water deeper and deeper to the lost remains of Polish kings and queens from the 15th century. Storm of the century, I'd say. Out of place and messy, but definitely royal nonetheless. The floating muddy remains of Queen Elizabeth Habsburg and Queen Barbara Radziwiłłona. Royalty. Not meant to be really floating around in the rainwater, you know? Now after these discoveries, that's when things get creepy. That's when the talks of a so-called curse began. Those involved in the findings began to die in unusual circumstances. Professors falling down elevator shafts, 2 having undisclosed medical issues, 1 professor becoming paralyzed in an accident, Professor Julius Klaus died from an unusual illness. Like, scary. Even a sculptor involved died when untying his shoelaces. That sort of stuff. Like creepy curse stuff. Even if you try and protect the remains of lost kings and queens and their history, even if you're involved, the curse apparently will get you. These curses are heavy, dude. These people were just trying to help and preserve this stuff, but royal curses are royal curses. Spooky stuff. Number 2, fairy forts. So apparently fairy forts in Ireland are a thing. A very respected and very old thing. This is awesome, and equally terrifying. Something about a big burly Irishman saying, "Oh, you don't go messing around them fairy mounds now, son." Like, that's horrifying. I'm surprised there isn't more indie Irish horror movies about these things. Serious business. More than 45,000 of them still surviving, and approximately 10,000 destroyed since the first large survey in the 19th century. In County Clare, locals protested the path was through an ancient fairy bush, or a fairy mound. So be careful if you live in Ireland, because apparently an ancient curse of Tara has been unleashed by the destruction of a fundamental ancient fairy fort. Traditional myth and local legend says interfering with fairies' homes is to risk your own life, with most believing strongly in the curse of Tara, the retribution of fairies on those involved in the disturbance of their natural home. In this case, the M3 motorway. Yeah, the N22 is the main road between Killarney and County Kerry and Cork, Ireland, otherwise known as the Emerald Isle. Associated with fairies for more than hundreds of years, dating back to the Iron Age and beyond, when the country was said to be under the power of the mystical Tuatha De Danann, a race of supernatural beings which were kind of like gods. In June 2007, Minister for the Environment Dick Roche signed an order destroying the Lismullen Henge. Lismullen Henge was a 4,000-year-old astronomical observatory and place of worship, once hailed as one of the most important archaeological finds of the century. And, of course, bad things followed. Surveyors held up by an armed gang, the Minister for Transport sucked out of a helicopter when the door mysteriously fell off, the Chief of Health and Safety Officer was struck by a falling tree. Hey, how about we listen to this ancient Irish lore and not around, huh? Also, it's a road. You can't build a little curve around a 4,000-year-old monument? Really? Come on, people. Number 1. FISTUS and PORCELLO. 2 cursed 1600-year-old lead tablets in the Museo Archeologico Civico di Bologna were recently deciphered. And one of them turns out to be one of the first known surviving curses directed at a Roman senator. That can't be good. This one's a juicy one. Well, these two, because it's a pair of lead cursed tablets. First off, how much must you have someone off before they get a big rock and start chipping and chiseling away at it for like 4 years straight? Like, if you're still mad after a day of chiseling rock or metal, it's serious. Usually a couple of deep breaths in about 5 minutes gets you over anything. But like, you know what I mean? Just anger. A drawing of a snake-headed deity, possibly Hecate, the goddess of the underworld, crossroads, and sorcery, with her arms crossed and a star carved over her. Although her name is not mentioned, the phrasing of the invocation is similar to the other curses that enlist Hecate and their dark curses. The crossed arms symbolize the binding of the deity to the curse. The goddess will remain bound until its terms are fulfilled. This is what it says. Quote, "Crush, kill FISTUS the senator. May FISTUS dilute, languish, sink, and may all of his limbs dissolve." Okay, it's a little harsh, no? The other lead tablet, cursing PORCELLO, has a little less violence, but still, yeah, pretty hateful. The cursed person's name PORCELLO and his wife Morelia. Same snake-headed deity with crossed arms, but this time, PORCELLO gets a drawing too. He's portrayed as a wrapped mummy with his arms crossed and his name written on both of them. Quote, "Destroy, crush, kill, strangle PORCELLO and Morelia. Their soul, heart, and buttocks, liver." Again, what did these people do? Like, liver? That's so specific. Unfortunately, we don't know where they came from. They were acquired by the museum in the 19th century, then forgotten about until about their rediscovery in 2009. The museum has no specific record of acquisition of the tablet's provenance. They could be anywhere from the late Roman Empire. Yeah, anywhere. The two curses, mainly written in Latin and inscribed on thin lead, would have been created by two different people in the late life of the Roman Empire. They both lay at the Museo Archeologico Civico in Italy. Yo, I don't want to get dissolved. People are saying dissolved a lot, you know? That's really harsh. This curses, man. Serious stuff.
In at number 5, we have DAVELIS Cave. DAVELIS Cave is one of the most famous and well-known haunted caves in the world, and tourists and locals visit often to try and come in contact with the paranormal spirits that haunt the cave. It's located in Penteli, a mountain to the north of Athens, Greece, and has been around since the 5th century. Back then, it was used as a marble quarry by the builders of the Acropolis, and the cave was actually discovered by accident during work for the extraction of marble. During the Middle Ages, it was used by Orthodox Christian hermits, and later on a small church was built at the entrance of the cave, featuring an unusual double layout, one part devoted to Saint Spiridon and one to Saint Nicholas. It was used as a place of worship for the followers of Pan and the nymphs. It is also believed to have been, and still could possibly be, used by other religious groups, mainly occultists. The cave got its name from a belief that an infamous 19th century thief and robber named Daveli used the cave as a hideout, and legend has it that he hid his treasures inside the cave, and over the years many people have come to try and find his fortune. Many times throughout history the cave has been used as a shelter for civilians, and in 1977 construction work started on the cave, and it's unclear who was behind it. Many believe it might have been the works of the government wanting to use the cave and surrounding areas for the US and Greek army. The cave has been associated with various paranormal activity and ghost sightings since the ancient times, this being the main reason it's being used for a place of worship. The mystical character of the cave continues to fascinate people to this day, and dozens of urban legends are connected to the cave. There are numerous tales of people experiencing strange and abnormal activity that has taken place in and around the cave. Stories tell of electronics that stop working, water flowing the wrong way, and disappearances of explorers who enter the cave to never emerge again. Also, details such as a small handprint near the entrance furthers the mystery of this place. In at number 4, the Necromantian. The Necromantian was an ancient Greek temple built and dedicated to the god and goddess of the underworld. The Necromantian was an ancient Greek temple built and dedicated to the god and goddess of the underworld, Hades and Persephone. According to tradition, it was located on the banks of Acheron River in Epirus, near the ancient city of Ephria. This site was believed to be the door to Hades, the realm of the dead. The word Necromantian means oracle of the dead, and the faithful came here to talk to their dead ancestors. Other temples were known to house oracles of the dead, but the Necromantian of Ephira was the most important. It belonged to the Thesprotians, the local Epirot Greek tribe, and they would participate in rituals involving elaborate ceremonies where they would seek to speak to the dead. The people would eat specific foods like pork, bread, and oysters, said to cleanse the body, and would proceed to sacrifice a sheep, and the faithful would descend through a series of meandering corridors, leaving offerings to the people as they passed through the iron gates. The celebrants would then witness the priest arise from the floor and fly throughout the temple, said to be possessed by the souls of the dead. The Necromantian was also described as the entrance by which Odysseus made his Nekia, which is the ancient Greek cult practice and is a rite by which ghosts were called up by the Greeks and questioned about the future. This temple was believed by many to be the final resting spot. Once they passed on and their bodies decayed into the earth, their spirits were released, and the Necromantian was the final resting place for the dead. Many locals and tourists come to try and communicate with the dead. There is an abundance of paranormal activity in this place, and it is known as an entryway to the underworld, and is one of the only direct channels on Earth for the souls of the underworld to come and communicate with humans. In at number 3 we have Salem Mansion. The Salem Mansion is a dark, mysterious, and eerie abandoned mansion located in Thessaloniki. The villa was designed in 1878 by Xenophon Paeonides, who was known to be the most famous Greek architect in Thessaloniki. The mansion was bought in 1894 by Emmanuel Salem, who was the most important lawyer in the city and an eminent member of the Jewish community. It remained in the family for over 20 years, and the family gave its famous name the Salem Mansion. During World War I, the villa had changed hands after the Salem family left in 1915, and it became the consulate of the Austro-Hungarian Empire for more than half a century. In 1978, the mansion was damaged extensively by an earthquake that devastated Thessaloniki. To this day, the house still belongs to the Italian state but remains deserted. There have been many plans to restore the villa, but for some reason it has yet to be done. This mansion is a very mysterious place, and even just looking at it you can sense the fear and horror. There are many legends about the place, and many paranormal investigators visit this infamous place to try and communicate with whatever horrific beings haunt the mansion. Many people speak of when they have visited the place that they felt cold air around them, even in the middle of summer, hearing doors close out of nowhere and hearing steps all throughout the house. Locals have mentioned that they stay away from this sinister house due to all the stories and sightings that have happened here. Many think it's cursed and stay as far away as they can. In 2013, the producers of the hit TV show American Horror Story used a photo of the Salem Mansion for one of the posters promoting the new season because of its haunting appearance. None of the people working on the series ever mentioned the home being in Greece, and the series of the show, Coven, revolves around a group of witches and is set in New Orleans, so many believe this house is located in the United States. If you're brave enough to visit the Salem Mansion, you have to go all the way to Greece. In at number 2 we have Kontos Mansion. The Kontos Mansion was built in 1900 for Nicholas Kontos, who was the Russian consul for Greece and lived there with his wife and 4 children. The mansion is located beside the ocean in the small village of Ano Lahonia Pelion. Nicholas was one of the most powerful men in central Greece at the time and was widely known in the Pharsala area, and they owned homes in other places like Volos and Athens. The popular urban legend that surrounds the house is that it's haunted after the death of the Kontos family, who was supposedly poisoned by a dead lizard that had fallen into a jug of milk. It was later later found out that the children in the family died in their early teens of tuberculosis, but the urban legend is reinforced by the funerary monument in the cemetery of Bolos, which presents a table with a decanter and 3 chairs around it, each inscribed with each name of the children and the age they passed, but they all said they all died at a very young age. No one really knows the truth, so the rumors of this cursed mansion continue to this day. Another legend believes that many war soldiers also haunt the mansion. During World War II, the mansion was occupied by the who used it as headquarters, where Greek warriors were interrogated and tortured. There were many Greeks who were tortured and executed in the villa's basement. This mysterious mansion has many different stories, and these are reinforced because many other families who lived in the mansion after the Kontos fell into a lot of misfortune, as well as people who worked on the home. Many of the past owners reported hearing spine-chilling screams and cries, causing none of them to stay too long. Some of the workers who helped renovate the villa never saw end results, as many of them unexpectedly died before finishing. Many locals tend to stay away from the haunted mansion, but many tourists come to experience the haunting for themselves. But this mansion is one of many in Greece that have multiple ghost sightings inside and is truly terrifying. To this day, the Kontos mansion stands empty and abandoned, which makes this place even scarier. And finally, in at number 1 we have Villa Kalogis. The Villa Kalogis is located in the Rafina area of Attica, which was owned by Pericles Kalogis, who was a very wealthy but disturbed man. The villa was named after him, and he stayed in the large mansion with his wife and family. The legend says that in 1910 Pericles took the life of his wife before taking his own life, and some versions tell the story of him taking the life of his whole family before taking his own life in the family home. So there are many stories of Pericles and his family haunting the home, and many have seen family members running around the home and hearing mysterious footsteps. During World War II, the home had been taken over by who used it to imprison and torture Greeks in the cellar, who many believe haunt the cellar to this day. Years later, while attempting to demolish the home, the bulldozer being used suddenly stopped working while approaching the house, and after 2 of the workers died from sudden heart attacks, all thoughts of knocking down the home were abandoned. Another popular legend regarding the haunted mansion is that Anau accepted a bet from his friend that he couldn't last a night in the famous haunted house. Well, he did last the night, but when his friend came in the morning to check on his friend, he found him dead in the home. It's said that nothing at all is able to grow for a few meters around the building. Experts who have investigated this phenomenon found that the atmosphere surrounding the house is uncommonly high in negative ions, something that is thought to be linked to paranormal activity. This haunted villa is among one of the most haunted in all of Greece and should be avoided.